Welcome to Blue Collar Mystics, the under-the-hood approach to the depths of human consciousness. So many mysteries, so little time, so many big words. That's why we aim to take the mystical and make it practical, usable in your everyday life. And you know, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. What happened when you started asking yourself the real questions? Like, who am I? What is this? Is it a hologram? Is this some kind of weird cosmic joke? Hey, these are the questions that we are trying to get to the bottom of as we explore the final rabbit hole together here as Blue Collar Mystics. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the show, Blue Collar Mystics. We are that show. How is that? I hope everybody's having a great day. I'm really excited to bring on a long overdue guest. We haven't talked in quite some time, and we've already been riffing it up. I want to go ahead and welcome our good friend, Andy, from the Deep Share podcast to the show. What's up, my friend?
Hey, man, it's been too long, and this is awesome. Thanks for having me back. This is great, man.
It really has been too long. We've already been riffing, talking about quitting, giving up.
Yeah, just give up. Just give up. It's the new mantra, right?
I think that's so good because it's like the things you can't give up. You would try. You would try.
It sounds like the transhumanist, like, I don't know, cabal, like way of distracting from the truth, like the let it go from Eastern mysticism, right? Just let go of attachment. I think they just mean give up. Just go to use your meditation app that we've provided, and the binaural beats that you can activate by pressing your left eyebrow 3 times.
That's right. That's right. Oh, it's so good.
How it's gonna go.
Yeah, I watched the video today that was like dating in 10 years, and I'm like, man, I need to find somebody actually pretty soon. Like,
yeah, let's start a campaign, man. Get Owen a girlfriend.
I hadn't really been focusing on that, but then you think about 10 years from now.
Well, hey, typically it's like the best way to find someone is to not focus on it. So maybe you should just keep trucking, keep doing what you're doing, focus on being your beautiful self.
Yeah, I think
you're doing a lot of good stuff.
Oh, dude, likewise. Yeah, it's so cool watching you and following everything that you guys are doing. You got the garden over there you've been tending all summer, and I've really enjoyed seeing what you guys have been sharing there. It's awesome.
Oh, thanks, man. I hope it's been inspiring. It's been challenging and a lot of life lessons. And well, thank you. My beautiful wife just brought me a glass of water. That's awesome. Yeah, we've been learning a lot. My wife has been just like literally exhausting herself learning everything about each and every fruit and vegetable that we can possibly grow here in New England, down south if we were to go that way, up north if we were to go that way. Like, where are all the zones? It's unbelievable. All the things I didn't know about gardening and just patterns in the earth and all this kind of stuff. It's unbelievable, but it's challenging for sure, especially when you get really hopeful and you have some plants growing and they're looking great, and then something just happens, and it's not even always your fault. Sometimes it's nature, because nature can be a total asshole. And it's like squash has like these I can't remember, my wife's gonna kill me for not remembering, but they're like these little bugs that like burrow into the root, and you have to literally check your squash plants under each and every part of them, every leaf, every day. Otherwise you might get behind and one of them might get in there, and then everything's dead. It's just dead. Like those kind of examples ad nauseum, but it's good. It's good.
No, that's crazy. No, I totally get it. We work so hard, and it goes back to that whole thing that we just like started opening up about. It's like, it's so freaking funny too. And I don't know, what else are you going to do with your time? You have to continue to follow whatever those challenges are, and try to have fun with it. And that's exactly what I think, everybody is. We're at this like interesting impasse, and we've learned so much, and we're trying to figure out how to apply it. And there's so many challenges. I say sometimes, like, if people talk about how great nature is, it's like, yeah, you think nature is so amazing, go live there for a fucking year. You know what I mean? And tell me how awesome it is. You wind up writing like a Sand County Almanac or something, but
yeah, like wait till autumn's over.
Right, exactly. And then it's winter.
At least where I am.
Yeah. Well, winter here it's not hard, but it's just sucky. It's just inconvenient. It's like 38 and rainy. It doesn't.
Right. It's not like cold enough for a winter jacket, but it's not warm enough to take it off. Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Up here, it gets down to like -15, -20 sometimes in the winter. And but that's the fun part. Then you get tents and you go up north and camp out in it like idiots. It's so much fun.
Sitting like an ice bath up there.
Yeah. If we could find one, mostly like you get up to New Hampshire area in the wintertime to go like mountain climbing, and it's just a frozen wasteland. And I'm trying to tell my wife, like, she wants to move south because of the farming zones, and I'm like, New Hampshire. And she's just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, she hates the cold. So it's a tough sell,
I don't like the cold that much either. And like New Hampshire, I drove up there for Pork Fest, not this summer, but the one before. It is way up there. Damn, New Hampshire is way up there. It's beautiful. It was really gorgeous up there, but damn, it is far away. It's almost Canada.
Right. And then you got Maine, and then the top of Maine. I used to go to Baxter State Park up in the like real northern Maine to do Mount Katahdin. And you're talking like when you're at the campsites around Mount Katahdin, you're in like 15 miles, 20 miles of wilderness in every direction. It's so insane. And you just listen and you hear nothing sometimes. And it's just this amazing stillness that I've never found here in Massachusetts, unfortunately, but there's other places to go. And we don't know where it's taking us, but we're going somewhere eventually.
That's cool. No, I love that idea. And I'm for it too. I have some ideas as far as like how to get property to basically, help pay for itself. I've just been doing the Airbnb thing for so long. Maybe it's one of those cases where it's like when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But
yeah, I mean, hey, passive income's a huge, amazing thing if you can start making it work for you.
Yeah. It's everywhere is kind of dependent on the place that you're at. Are there tourists? What brings them in? All those types of things, and then you can adjust your approach based on all of those things. Some places are just so busy that people are always coming through. And so at that point, that's automatic. I had some friends, they made like, I don't even know how much money. They paid off their fucking house by renting teepees in their yard.
That's amazing.
They lived in the city, so they were pretty close to the city. And the teepees were amazing. My friend who built them was like an engineer, so he knew exactly what he was doing. He had these massive teepees that were metal and this really thick tarp. They even had them heated and air conditioned.
That's sick. I would have stayed there. That's awesome.
See what I mean? They put it up there as a joke.
That's what we're talking about. Like, and we need people. We're at the stage right now where we're kind of like, all right, we need to really find our people. And even though I feel like I have definitely found my people through podcasting and meeting everyone in this community and continue to do so, we need to find people that are actually willing to make some real crazy sacrifices and do some real different kind of living, because I mean, at least right now, that's what we're going for. And I don't think it's any sort of pipe dream. I've had those before. This is like, this feels like imminent, so we're thinking about that. Like, where can we get 25 acres of land for cheap? What can we do with it? We're looking into cob houses, and man, at first it sounds real hippy dippy and silly and a little like, I don't want to go that far. But then you see what you can do with cob houses. It's pretty fucking amazing. And they're standing for hundreds of years. Of course, you have to find a zone where they allow cob houses.
Right.
Because, that's a rule for reasons.
Well, I had never heard of cob houses. Sounds pretty
It's really
cool.
amazing. It's a mixture of straw and sand, I want to say. There's different variations you can do. There's like a new method where people are adding like a little bit of concrete into this mix, and they're creating these like fucking houses that are going to last hundreds and hundreds of years. But it really depends on how much time and effort you can put into it, because financially they're cheap as hell. Like, you're talking, you can build an island in a kitchen out of the same material. Like, you can build so much of your house. Like, you can build in shelves and everything.
That's so cool.
So you can even build benches along walls and run heating through it. So like, you can have a heated couch in the wintertime or something. It's nuts what you can do. And it's cheap. We're talking like, you know, a small house for $5,000, $15,000, $10,000, something like that. So it's awesome. Way different. It's just a lot of manual labor. It really is. It's not impossible to learn. My wife and I are looking into it now. There's like cheap classes you can take to learn how to do it. And it's not like learning, you know, carpentry over a friggin' YouTube video. It's not like that.
Right.
This is stuff that people have been building since probably time immemorial. You know, like we've been doing these kinds of structures. I'm even open to that idea. I don't know if you've heard about the pyramids, the possibility that those stones were actually poured. And that there was no need for giants carrying things or electromagnetism. Not that that stuff may not be in it, you know, this thing, but just the fact that that's a plausible idea right there.
You just have a mold and you just pour each block as you go.
Yeah, something along those lines. There's I don't know who, but there's someone out there that has kind of mapped out the whole hypothesis in detail. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, at least we know for a fact we have been building like this in many forms for a long time, you know.
These look like Lord of the Rings, like sort of J.R. Tolkien or
a little. Yes, that's the thing. We can't. It's so hard to find like modernized style, but they exist. It's totally, you know, you can do right angles.
The thing about
most people are like, I just want to live like a hobbit. Exactly. If I'm gonna go this far, I'm gonna make round doors.
That's right. That's exactly right. No,
and my wife and I are like, I mean, if we found one already built like that, I mean, I'm not going to entirely say no, as long as it's not ridiculous.
I mean, no, they're so cool. They're super charming. And I mean, that's really kind of the thing as far as like an Airbnb kind of thing or whatever, right? Like you want something that looks different, you know, like something that stands out from the other things and has some sort of a charm to it. If it's just a 1-bedroom apartment with a coffee table and a microwave and a coffee machine, then what do you got? You know, you're looking at $12 a night. If you can customize something and then start, you know, and then I would love to host like some retreats and stuff. Like that would be super fun. And then, you know, have people come and like the guy James that I've been working with, he does the Gong spaceships and just like have a Gong spaceship retreat, you know, have one just on the property, and then people come through, you know, that's part of the experience. Take them rafting, take them horseback riding, take them on a meditation, yoga, whatever. I mean,
yeah, man, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, maybe that's not considered passive income, but it's like, I don't know, immersive income or something like that. That's a cool term. I don't know if it works, but for now, like it, placeholder, like, I mean, I think that's where we're all headed anyway. I think if we were to eventually like kind of sum up what this movement, if we could call it that, is doing for people like us, at least that are thinking the way we are, is that it's empowering their ideas and just kind of like taking back childhood, taking back the idea of dreaming. And I know that sounds really hippie too, but
I don't. I've always
that's stigmatized on purpose.
Yeah, I think so
in my brain, it's stigmatized on purpose. You know,
agreed.
so it is that cheesiness and that awesomeness and that silly hippy dippy kind of feeling. It's like you should be able to go out there and utilize everything that you have or whatever you have and be able to earn from it, you know? And I think that's becoming more and more apparent. And the further we go, I think people are getting more and more objective with how they approach what kind of talents they really have and what they can offer. It's unbelievable. I can't really think of an example, but it's like, wow, someone thought to make money off that. That's amazing. Like, it's such a general idea. And it's so cool. Like using property to, you know, my wife mentioned, like, if we had 30 acres, shit, we'll build a whole wedding venue in the back or something,
right.
You know, have people give us piles of money, you know?
Right.
So there's just so many different ways to go about it. But if you have land, there's so much opportunity to provide, even not even just earn yourself, but to create that community kind of around you, or however many of you there are,
sure.
you know,
Sure.
if there's like a collective garden in the center of a massive block of land with a bunch of houses on it and shit,
yeah,
far enough away, we got our own space. Like, we each have like woods between our houses and shit, but it's like a neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
It's like just a different version of what we've had going on forever.
It's true. It's true.
More sustainable.
More sustainable and more, you know, more healthy from a community perspective. You're actually actively engaging with your community, you know.
Yeah, you're a part of it. You're a living, breathing part of it rather than just a consumer, which, you know,
yeah,
that's the road we've been turned into, you know, just the one road of consumer.
No,
actually, no, because we're the product now. So
that's true.
We're not even like consumers anymore. We're like passively working for them. We're their passive income.
Yeah, right. Traded on the stock exchange, right?
Yeah. You know, I don't know enough about that.
I don't either.
I hear these things. I'm like, I wonder how many chapters of a book I have to read to figure that out. If that's real or not. How many books do I have to read before I wonder if it's bullshit or not?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, I totally want to do my own research, but how long is it going to take? You know, it's interesting to hear a different theory, like you were saying about the blocks being poured on the pyramids. It's like, well, yeah, how simple could that possibly be, you know, as a solution? And people are continuously, I think, you know, figuring things out all the time. That's what's cool about the community. You'll hear about the flat earth stuff or like the Tartaria, you know, all of that stuff. And it's all intriguing and fanciful. And I'm an idealist too. So all the hippie shit always resonated with me. I had a coffee table book called Hippie, you know, on my,
I remember that book.
Yeah. I had it at my house and I would just strum through that, you know, when I was in college and be like, why am I doing college? You know,
that's fucking great. I pretty much have like a parallel to that. I had, it was called like Acid Tales or something like that. And it was this big, colorful book with like 2,000 personal accounts of acid trips. So that was like something I'd thumb through and be like, oh yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I had to back then. It was like I had to look into every psychedelic information thing I could because I needed to make sense of what the fuck was happening to my brain, you know? Had no community like this around me, right? It's 20 years ago. Wasn't the same. So.
Yeah. That's about, you know, right for me too. Like my college time, mid 2000s and on into the teen maybe. And just, there really wasn't, like in 2012 too, when I really had a paradigm shift, whatever time that was, like, and it wasn't really pretty, to be honest. It sucked, but like there was definitely no one around to talk to about that. And it was so fucking lonely. That was the worst part about it, you know? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I related so closely to like the first video I ever saw talking about Plato's cave and like showing the individual afterwards, how he first goes back into the cave to like try to convince his buddies and they don't believe him. Hey, they don't kill him yet. You know, he walks away and it's just showing him like outside enjoying that new world but just like alone in solitude with like the wind on them. And I'm like, man, that is my soul. Holy shit. And it was difficult. And I had friends around me that tripped balls with me, but nothing happened for them. And I think that makes sense. Like it only happens to those when it only happens when it's supposed to happen to somebody. That's all it really is.
I think you're right.
It
Yeah.
have to be tripping either.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah, of course not. Certainly not. It gives me an idea comedically. Like not too long ago, it was like extreme leftists on DMT. You know, it's like some things just never cut through for people. You know, and I don't understand how, because I had some pretty mind-altering experiences back in those days, and it really challenged me to change the way that I thought and approach the world. And I was with other people who I thought would have had similar conclusions drawn from the experience, right? But it wasn't always that way. And I think that's so interesting. I think it's really true. And it shows me how many mistakes I've made in the past, right? Like just trying to bring information and ideas to people before they're ready for it, because there's just nothing you can do. It's really kind of, you could sow seeds and be an example and do the, and do the positive things and the personal development things and all of those. But as far as it goes, like you're not going to open a flower up.
No, that's a great analogy right there. I mean, you just got to stand there and wait for it. Like,
that's it.
Wake up! Come on, flower!
You just yell at it.
Come on, you goddamn beautiful flower!
Right.
There's another angle to it too. It's like a lot of us, we always say that, right? It's like, well, you can't wake people up that aren't ready, and that is true. It totally is. And on the other end of it, I think most of us, pretty much everybody, when we have those phenomenal whatever experiences, we come back and we have to use our logical right brain to make sense of it. And not only to ourselves, but then when we go to tell people, right? And I think even if it makes sense to us at the time, I think to outsiders, they can't see all the parts that we're not saying that glue it all together for us. And call it the ether, right? It's that unknowable part. And it doesn't have to be that you had a spiritual experience or a near-death experience or psychedelic or anything like that. If you're here, you're here. And the point is that like that glue that holds it all together is the part that's like unknowable and unnameable that's inside of you that sees a pattern. And a pattern, that's abstraction, that's you. It's very personal. And when we all come together and we get it collectively, it's amazing and it's reassuring and it feels great. And those that don't see it, they don't feel affected by that, and yeah, it's just like we're bringing a story to them that's broken, but we don't see it as broken because we just already know. We have this innate feeling that we're coming from the right place and they should just friggin' get it, and that's impossible. It's impossible even when they do get it most of the time.
I think there's like a buffer too, where especially if you're deeply invested or you've spent a lot of time thinking about a certain topic or idea, you just go so deep, and most people are not, you can't really relate to them anymore because you've gone so far down whatever that path is. It's like a professor that's been a professor for 50 years and they're just angry at their students. Right. It's like, dude, we haven't been studying this shit for 50 years like you have,
Did he just call us long hairs?
Right? Like the distance and the gap, between how they understand something or how we understand something versus somebody, outside. And to get that perspective too, like you don't get a lot of perspective. Like, let's say it's like marketing, for instance, or somebody's giving you life advice or something. They'll tell you to do something, but they won't necessarily always tell you why, right? Like you won't always have that context, and people will just start hammering away. They'll just post every day, but it's like, but you're not posting relevant content. You're not captioning your whatever, right? As an example, but you get so detached, I think, from where the beginner is and where those gaps, like,
right,
all that connective stuff that like you and I could see, or I could like say just a funny CIA joke or some shit, you know, and you'd be like, oh yeah, and we just
Oh, absolutely.
you know,
There's so much insider information that if I were to like hang out with someone that I haven't seen in like 8 years or something, they'd be like, what do you even, what language are you even
Are you guys talking a different,
I mean, try to be around me talking about history at this point is just infuriating to anyone that doesn't want to hear about ancient shit that's, you know, hidden and all that, you know.
I love
my
that.
father loves history too.
Yeah.
Which is it's a real contentious point with a son that wants to impress his dad, not only impress him, but wow him and give him that feeling, just like we were talking about. You can't do it, but it's unfortunate because with history, it's like you can really look at this amazing outline of what we have in front of us and go, look how fucked up it is and how, you know, not proportionate they don't fit together. It's amazing. But when the indoctrination is there and especially with someone that loves history, but from an establishment point of view, that's a lot of pride as well. You run into a lot of pride and even faith in those places. It's very strange. But yeah, I'm the worst at Thanksgiving now. My God. I'm like, oh, you think it's bad that like Columbus, blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, that's not even that.
That didn't even happen.
Yeah.
Columbus was an alien from the 12th D.
Oh, you think ancient aliens? Yeah, there are no aliens. Like, yeah, I'm nuts.
But last year,
I tried to talk to my fucking like sister about Bock Saga a few months ago, and she's like, interesting. Wow, that's crazy. Okay.
I think that's so interesting. Would you talk a little bit about it?
Oh, sure. Yeah, if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not something that I've really dug into, but I understand the basic underlying premise. And I think I see, I don't know. It makes sense to me. It's an interesting idea for sure.
I think it's a really great reference point. There's a lot of different really great reference points around the world that offer up an origin story. So, you know, I tell people that, you know, take it not with a grain of salt, but with like maybe a boulder. You know, you're not taking the whole thing, but because it's like the root language that goes along with this Bock Saga is so conclusive logically that it's really like startling how, like, you know, eventually when you get into Bock Saga and you start trying to disprove things, it becomes really squirrely because the way that this, just to give a background to people, I guess it's like it's a Finnish story from one family, supposedly passed down through generations forever, literally forever. So, I mean, again, it's a big what if right off the bat. But it's underlined by this root language paired with these symbols in like an alphabet. And actually, it's even called Alfernes Beten, which translates, depending on who you talk to, as the rhyme of the Allfather or rhyme of the elves. It's very Nordic and very Scandinavian. But the way this root language is constructed is that every sound, every pure sound, has a meaning as a part of the story. And when you go around the circle of the alphabet or the Alfernes Beten, it tells the beginning of the story with those root sounds. And then when you start putting the symbols together, as you know, we would call them words and sentences and all that, as you go further out in scale, so picture a lot of concentric circles, no pun intended, and that's important. You start to, you still use all these same root sounds, and it continues outward. So nothing can contradict from one level of the story to the other. So if you're getting the saga in its true form, that should fall true. And it's all about pronunciation. And this is where we get into an area where I think a lot of people will be familiar with just the concept, at least, of the English language. Latin-based languages themselves, supposedly, they seem coded. There's a lot of weird word magic, double meanings, things like that, different spellings, very, very important. the saga talks about how basically they have their version of like the Tower of Babel.
Okay.
And it's basically when the black ink hit the white paper. And that's like kind of like the metaphor they use, because that's when the pronunciations started to flow freely and divide up and change. So maybe this wasn't like a purposeful coding or something. I call it like a game of telephone that some became aware of and know how to manipulate it. You know, it's something like that. More.
That's so fascinating to me. Okay, so so I was actually going to ask you,
sure,
that were related to the Tower of Babel and how all that, because
nice.
The idea was right that everyone spoke one language.
Yes. Everyone spoke two languages. There's actually two. And this is another really crucial point, because supposedly we now speak a combination of both of these languages.
Wow.
Both of these languages together formed Germanic languages.
Okay.
And from the Bock Saga's point of view, these Germanic languages are far older than we have ever been told. And they basically seeded the whole planet. That's this whole thing. So yeah, in the very beginning of the story, you have paradise time. It's called Paradiset. And at that time in the story, the earth is not tilted on its axis. It's standing straight up. It's in ball and lance, straight up and down.
Wow.
And at that time in the story, that would put Helsinki at the top of the earth. And Helsinki was just called Hell. So Hell being a place in the north, not down below us. Also, you'd assume a pretty cold place rather than one that's on fire. So you start to see the roots of these inversions, at least from this perspective. And again, this is really like shock value, right? Like at the beginning, when you start to hear about this kind of stuff, it's like, okay, that sounds like a psyop, or what are they distracting from? But as you go further into it, and you start looking into the language, man, and how it all works. And then you start hearing accounts from others, like people and like scholars and mathematicians who couldn't get their brains around it and have used it ever since. And like this one mathematician met this man, Eeyore Bock, the one that was releasing this information to the public in 1987. And he, from this root language, Alphanus Beton, this alphabet wheel, he was able to connect the flower of life geometrically somehow, and moved and built a yurt and spent the rest of his life drawing mathematical geometrical patterns relating to this root language's quadrat, their mathematics. It's crazy. And quadrat is their word for mathematics, and it's all about the circle with the little Q line. It has to do with the North Pole, this hell, with the pole and the sun going around perfectly 24 hours a day, like they're 12 hours a day, 12 or something like that. I always get that mixed up. But they had it was tropical. In this story, the entire planet in this paradise time was tropical.
Okay.
So then we have at the top we have hell. This is also known as Udenma in this story. Uden, we already hear something familiar there that eventually became Viking and Norse mythology. But the way we're seeing it is that was all the Norse stories that we hear are maybe like already hijacked stories from much older legends. So anyway, I'm kind of all over the place here, but just to paint the picture for your audience, because this is a weird story. So everyone all over the earth was all brown or black. Everybody, North Pole, everywhere else. And it was all tropical. And then you have the first Ragnarok, which is, destruction. And that's what tilts the earth. Whatever this was, it tilts the earth. And even, I think at one point in the saga, it claims that it tilts the galaxy. So like a galactic tilt or something.
Whoa.
Pretty weird. And then ice starts forming all over the northern hemisphere of our planet. Helsinki's no longer in the north anymore. It's put it into this position that is severely affected by the Gulf Stream that comes out of Mexico and goes up all the way into the Gulf of Finland. And the story says that this Gulf Stream, this warm air, warm water that was coming with it, formed a figure eight, or a rousette, as they call it, around this area of hell, this Uudenmaa, where Helsinki ended up after the tilt. And it kept hell from freezing over.
What the?
So, surrounded by hundreds of miles of snow and ice, like a mile high, whatever the Ice Age says is kind of what they're talking, the Younger Dryas Ice Age. And, you know, Dan Unaki, Dan, my co-host on Deep Chill, where we talk about this kind of stuff, is kind of convinced that this is where the flat earth distraction comes from, where the ice wall. And I think it's a little off. It may not be, but it's interesting to say the least, the connection there, at least, because literally they have this haven in the center with hundreds of miles of ice and, like, you know, surrounded by these giant ice walls that they can't get out of. So during this time period, they survive, and the rest of the Northern Hemisphere is absolutely decimated and destroyed. But they can carry on, and they do so in the story for thousands and thousands of years, while the rest of the Northern Hemisphere has been kicked back to absolutely nothing. You know, anyone that's survived is struggling for generations. So later in the story, you have the second Ragnarok, which is when the ice begins to descend southward and starts to melt. And this is where we start to get familiar stories, because they have their own Noah story, and they have their own story of, like, you know, the interpretations that we see not only from like alternative sources, but the Bible itself with like the Nephilim and stuff like that. It's always these, you know, these beings, these, what is it? The sons of God came down to marry the daughters of, or lay with the daughters of men. And this story is told in the Bock Saga. It's told about how the old ways in the old world, trapped inside this hell, this Uudenmaa, you weren't, after, even though the ice was melting, you don't know. We're going back to Uudenmaa, wherever, as soon as they were able to go back there, they did. Because when the ice started to melt and go southward, I mean, they describe it as like a scraping across the crust of the earth. So like Uudenmaa was destroyed again after it was this wonderful haven for thousands of years, and the only place that you could survive, it gets destroyed again. But afterwards, they end up going back to Uudenmaa, and to leave the old ways, to leave their system in the way it was blasphemy, was terrible. And I think, and many think, that this is where we get this story of the Nephilim. I mean, we have all these stories of the flood kind of carrying with it these messengers, and many, many interpretations. But we'd have to go real deep and real far into why I think this is all human stories, and it's all stories of people from the north. And I've talked to a lot of people that are researchers that have gone on the ground, you know, in these areas all over Northern Europe and Ireland and Scotland, all these places. They're the same stories everywhere. You got the Tuatha De Danann in Ireland and Scotland. You have the Tuatha De Anu as you get closer to the Middle East. And then you have the full-on Anunnaki, and they're all talking about these tall, white, blonde, red hair, blue-eyed, green-eyed people. And so I've been on this tirade. I'm going through all sorts of folklore from all kinds of countries, and I'm investigating their fae folk, their fair folk, because I think they're all white folks. And so the Bock Saga says that this is where white people came from, because during that time period where they were trapped in Uudenmaa and everywhere else was ice, or should we say all the land is ice, because this is supposedly where we get Atlantis from, that it eventually morphed into this, you know, location. It turned into a title, a name, a place. But at one point it was this phonetic, all land is ice, alt lant is. And it's fucking crazy when you match those phonetics up with a lot of the other examples from the Bock Saga that work. And then you match those up with the Finnish folklore that is accepted, that it all fucking matches up. So we get a lot of interesting things going on here. I mean, we have all the stories we're familiar with, and we know that that's usually a red herring, right? when you get something that's going to come in and go, oh, no, no, no. I know you think there's this and this and this. We can explain all of that. That's usually a bad sign and not a good thing. So that's where my mind's been while I've been extremely fascinated and in love with the research to see everything and all the connections. But at the same time, I always have that voice going, yeah, but I mean, it's interesting that it does kind of feel like, you know, they've been talking about an archaic revival for a long time. And you have this old world heathen family supposedly talking about this, you know, coming back and everything. It's just all the parts are very interesting, especially when you lay it out in like this, the duality that we are handed, and we see what the duality looks like. We have this like old world idea versus this very new world idea coming out, and they both seem to be part of the control group, the in charge group. But I don't think they have the same goals. I think it's a breaking away, and I call it the oldest family feud.
Yeah,
because I think it's the prodigal son story. I think those family members, those lines of families from this Acer line from the north that did leave Udenma and mingled with all the southern ladies. I think that really it's the Romeo and Juliet story. It really is the fall. It's nuts, man.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in a way, you can also see, sorry, I don't mean to ramble. One last point.
No.
You also get to, unfortunately, connect this shit into Aryanism and keeping it in the one race and all that. And that was done, according to the Bock Saga, out of desperation during Atlantis, right? And these things like muscle memory in our consciousness, for even if it's forgotten consciously, these cultural ideas, everything carries on an unconscious or subconscious level. And I think that's why Dan and I are having such an easy time matching up all this symbolism from all of our cultures right back to the Bock Saga, because it's not that they mean the same thing. It's not even necessarily that the elites know about this, or maybe they do, but it's just, if we actually had a civilization that was doing the same exact rituals for thousands and thousands, possibly millions of years, if that's actually possible, we don't have anything like that in our modern history or world or anything, where we actually have cultural norms existing that long in consciousness. So we're probably just acting out the same old stories out of this muscle memory, in my opinion. And then that's the end of the rant.
No, that's good. That's really, really interesting. I was going to ask, have you looked at the Oralinda book at all? Are you familiar with
I have. Not as much as Dan. I think Dan's been reading it. I've just looked at some passages. But yeah, it alludes to this as well. And then there's a Florida saga that we've just recently gotten turned on to, and we're doing a round table with those gentlemen that have been researching it. Next week. It's called the Saxer Saga, Saxer, and it's just as outlandish sounding on the surface of it, but it also claims Atlantis. It also claims Garden of Eden, which also, I mean, when we talk about hell, oddly enough, in the Bock Saga, that is clearly the Garden of Eden as well, Garden of Heathen, as I like to call it. But yeah, so this Florida thing claims the same things. And we have this guy telling us that he can connect the two sagas and saying why they're part of the same bigger story. And I'm like, I'm all ears. I'm ready, man. I want to hear it, because we do have a lot of new weird shit going on with uncoverings in America, right? Got a lot of weird stuff going on under our own feet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you just look back, 100 years, and there's a lot of evidence in newspapers of giants, it's not something we talk about now, but I mean, just that alone is curious enough, and all of the, I mean, as we go back in history, oh my God, it just gets more and more ridiculous. I think it's fascinating that when the ink meets the paper, that's when they say, that's when shit goes haywire. Cause
got that Babel feel.
Damn, that's gnarly. So,
and how about that? How interesting is it that we say Babel as in like you're making no sense, right? It's almost like they're alluding to this language that was created right up out of nature itself. And that's kind of how they describe it in the Bock Saga, that it was given to the brain from Odin, the sun. This is the origin of sun worship too, of course. Dun, dun, dun.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's
I'm
fascinating to
taking
me.
over.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, when you look into Christianity, even,
Hell
and
yeah.
or some like modern Pentecostal kind of shit, they're talking in tongues. How does that fit
Yeah.
in, do you think, to the Bock Saga?
It might be a mockery of something like a chaos for order.
Hmm.
I haven't looked into talking in tongues, but I wonder if it has something to do with the primordial idea. I know that like Terrence McKenna used to talk about like, where has it been written large that primates with small mouth noises should speak of truth? And it's true. Like, we're just making mouth noises, and Joe Rogan said it all stoned out too. Like, man, we're just saying mouth noises, and our brains are interpreting that shit. It's like, yeah, we're probably saying completely different things to each other. Like, hey, Owen, how's it going? I have a tall hat on. Excellent. Like, we just don't even know what we're saying.
Sure.
I don't know. So I wonder if that talking in tongues thing is some like much deeper, like ritualistic, metaphoric meaning or something. I don't know.
I don't know. It's hard to know. There is something, I think, spiritual or something, to it.
Yeah.
I don't know what that necessarily is, or if it would relate. Like if we have like some innate language within us and we're all speaking it at certain times, when things happen. Yeah. Like when you have this experience and they do it in church, because they get carried away by the spirit or whatever. But I mean, I've seen this happen in other scenarios as well,
Oh, hell yeah. And dude, when you just said like a language inside us, I don't know why it just lit me up. Because the only reason I was fascinated by the Bock Saga to begin with was not because, I mean, Altalant East was pretty catchy. I was like, whoa, finally a unique perspective on Atlantis. And just real quick, it's because that we find concentric ring, things all over the Northern Hemisphere. And we have all these different ideas of where Atlantis was. Well, everything was fractal. So this northern hell had this concentric ring system as a caste system and how it all worked in society. And all over the planet, these concentric rings were dotted everywhere because it was the same system all over the planet in this paradise time. But yeah, anyway, back to this. The reason why I was initially fascinated by it was the root language, because the root language would tie everything together like it does. And when I was tripping balls one time, a long time ago, I had 8 grams of mushrooms. And at one point, yeah, man. And at one point in the trip, I like just came out of a stupor that I had been in for like hours on a bed, and told my friends that there's a hidden language inside of us, or inside of syntax itself. And it includes every language that we know of on the planet, but just the sounds. It's not about like the whole words. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I was just insane. And I came back from that thinking I was insane, but there's just this nagging feeling like, I wonder if there's something to that. And then 20 years later, I find the Bock Saga talking about this language that literally like ties nature into the, like basically the incorporeal into the corporeal. And it was just like, holy shit, man. So yeah. Just that little cool tidbit.
I think it's awesome. No, I've been fascinated about it, dude. Thank you for sharing, because I know it's something you've been looking into for a little while, and I'm just like, hell yeah, I get to hear it straight from Andy's mouth.
It's wild, man. And it's an ongoing living legend too, because we have like, the next Nick Cage treasure hunt movie coming up, because we have this Lemminkainen temple in Sipoo, Finland, that they've been desperately trying to excavate since Eeyore Bock released this story. And this is supposedly the one place where for generations and generations, all those other ringlands would do pilgrimages back to the Aesir in the north and bring treasures and memorabilia and gold and gold and gold into this Lemminkainen temple. And so far, what Eeyore Bock described before he died, what they would run into if they were trying to excavate it, certain blocks in certain places, they have found them. Even though the Historic Society has claimed that that's a natural configuration, that's not man-made, and they've walked away a long time ago. But no, they're still digging. So yeah, there's a lot to this, man. Like, it literally covers every friggin' topic. It's nuts. The treasure hunting stuff is ridiculous. Like, if we were to find all that gold and all this memorabilia dedicated to like the Bock family in this thing, that would be completely insane.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing about it, all these different creation myths and all these different stories and ideas that we get, it's so easy to just jump on one and pounce on it. I've done that 100,000 times. But to see, all the different similarities and different ideas that sort of come together. The Oralinda book was cool for that because, but it just shows how much of history that we maybe don't even get to consider.
Mangled.
Yeah. I mean,
it's all
just
mangled.
completely just deleted. It's not even in
right.
Yeah, there's nothing to that. So we could look back at our lineages and see different values or different traditions or what have you that might have been highly cherished, that we maybe do, and then come into this world and we've got maybe our DNA and genetics a certain way, right? And so somebody else might not have those same experiences or be as empathetic or more or less or whatever. I know a lot of people talk about this, and I'm not trying to value one or the other, but I'm just pointing out that we could all be innately have different value sets, different like ancient traditions handed down, that we are not connected to, right? We have the capability for it, but we don't even know what it is. There's a disconnect there. It's fascinating to me. And
right. We're completely disconnected from the original meaning of why we do it.
Right.
Right. It's so bizarre
in the culture war that we live in.
Oh my God. Now. Yeah.
Values, it's no, don't worry about being well-read or learning to spell or
dude,
let's just twerk on MTV's Music Awards or whatever.
Yeah, twerk while you're doing Common Core,
Exactly.
That's why I'm homeschooling. Not the only reason, but that's one of them. I don't want to learn Common Core.
No, I got better ways to waste time,
Right. Yeah.
We'll just do it the old
looking into history.
Right. No, but it is so fascinating to me because you hear all these different themes and ideas, and then the idea of ink and paper coming into it, where all these different yarns can be spun, and whoever really knows, right? Infinite amounts. It reminds me of that quote, and I don't know who it is, but somebody from the CIA, where they're saying that, when the American public believes the opposite of everything that's true, our work will be done, or
our program will be successful, or we know we'll be successful.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's fucked, man. The cognitive dissonance. It just spreads like that. And just to give you an example of what they mean in the Bock Saga by pure sounds and all that, how this language is put together, and give you a glimpse of how clearly our language is either intentionally or accidentally encoded, is that think of our first letter in the English language as A, but to them that's two sounds. That's ah and E. And the E is the most important sound. And how interesting of the English language to suppress that. So, I mean, it's very intricate how it all pieces out, and what the sound, what our letters used to be, what our original sounds used to be that we're not even aware of. We recite the alphabet. That's the first thing we learn, as kids. And that's an interesting line to go down. I mean, the fact that so many of us talk about different angles of how we're all programmed from a very young age, even without our parents knowing they're programming us into this world, right? But that's a big one right there, the alphabet. And I'm doing it with my son right now. He's 5 years old. He's learning how to read, and he's learning how to do math, and he's about to turn 5 in a couple months, but I'm calling him 5. And he's loving it. It's great, and it's so weird how part of the indoctrination that children go through, I wouldn't say it's unavoidable, but there's so much that's ingrained in us that we can't even realize it. And even when we do, it's crap. Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, it's not like he's going to have to mingle with other kids and be different. And it's none of that. It's just it's very basic shit, I don't know. It's hard to explain, I guess.
Well, I can totally understand. It's like you're at Kroger and you hear a fucking Rick Astley song. You never asked for that,
Right.
it was never something that you voluntarily went after, but there it is in your consciousness, whether you like it or not, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I
All
mean,
kinds of little things like that.
yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, I think being a parent's fun because it's like I get the other side of I get to teach, but you're never teaching without learning. Like learning how to teach someone is like mind-blowing, man. It's like this is the test. This is the test. If I can prove that I learned how to fucking live. like what do I say to all his questions, right? Like, okay, well, this is the universe, God, it's testing me. What answers do I have for this child? You know?
Wow.
How do you tie shoes? Well, am I going to approach this with anxiety and stress? Am I going to do it peacefully and calmly? Like parenting is such a test. It's unbelievable. It really feels like, you know, those moments where like when you're on a really good roll and everything's going really good, you're riding that high wave and you see so obviously the challenges popping up at you, either that's ego or God challenging you or whatever it is. They're so obvious to see when you're really high rolling. You're like, no, that's not going to bother me today. No. It feels like that too. Like it feels like such a in your face, like, oh, you thought parenting was just all about love and fun. And no, this is real work. This is the deep work that you have to do. And you're doing it on yourself. And you think you're doing it on that little kid. You know what I mean? Like looking into inner child work and shit has blown my mind over the past couple of years. And it's impacted our parenting in a lot of amazing ways, because it's like, would you ever talk to your child the way you talk to yourself? And then shit, why am I talking to myself that way? And why would I ever, when have I lost my temper in front of my kid? Or when have I approached something impatiently that I really didn't have to? You know what I mean? All these questions start popping up.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. Like to me, it's like, I know that somewhere is kind of like monitoring what I'm doing in a way, right? But I can't imagine having that be a conscious entity, and then all of a sudden it sees you act in like a ridiculous way, like, oh God, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to that's the God argument, right? Like, it's always like, it's like the yin yang envisioned as one fish chasing its own tail.
Yeah.
And it's like, is that the truth, or is there the other? And that's kind of like that ancient question. I found that, I can't remember where, but it was like during my psychedelic research, I found someone talking about this idea of the sacred other. And like,
I love that.
Forever been a question whether it's there or not, or whether it's a trick of yourself. And that sounds really atheistic, and I don't take it that way. I think the answers are somewhere in between, you know. I really do believe that. I think there's like some form of how there being quote unquote no God or no afterlife quote unquote is a real thing, while also there being like us as eternal beings. I feel like it's a paradox somehow, and I haven't been able to figure it out, probably because you're not allowed to.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a Eastern saying that it's better to taste sugar than to be sugar.
Oh, that's beautiful, dude. That is fucking beautiful.
And so I think it comes along to do with that. It's like we are everything, but
we're an emanation of it all.
But we get to experience it when we separate ourselves from it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to at all.
Yeah, it's like when they talk about when you know, a lot of the hippie movement talked about, like, you know, this is why we started caring about the planet, because we literally felt the weight of the world on our shoulders. And that can happen under psychedelics, especially mushrooms, big time. And it's like, yeah, it's like a God perspective that you get. And if people come back and they think they're God, I think that's false. And I agree with the Christian side of that situation. I think that is the false ideology. It's that we're emanations of God. And, you know, I think it's an original point is what God is, or something. But that's besides the point.
Yeah. No, I agree with that too. It's like the way that I've heard it say is we're each a particle of God, right? Like, so we're each like this component of it, right? Like what Rumi would say is, you know, you're not a drop in the ocean. You're the entire ocean in a drop,
right?
But you are in that drop, right? And so, Yeah, and that's part of. I've been getting into Gurdjieff's work actually too. It's
awesome.
Really good. Yeah, it's really good.
How you liking him?
I like it. He's funny.
What have you taken from him so far? Or go ahead. Sorry.
Keep going. It's that the biggest thing that I've taken from him, and this is something that I got to explore even before I found his work, was the difference between our personality and our essence. Right. Like, and so he splits those into two different things. And I took this acting process. It's kind of an acting process, like a personal branding workshop kind of thing. It was incredibly valuable, especially from the standpoint of writing comedy, where I can understand how people perceive of me. And then
you sent me that, didn't you?
It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I've been using that to create characters in the audio drama. It's an excellent tool. Yeah, man.
And so basically what they try to do is define your sort of essence, how you come across, your authentic you. And so your personality is mostly programmed. That's mostly like, how do people perceive of me? How do I want to be perceived of? All these ideas of what he would call internal considering versus external considering, which is like seeing things from a higher perspective and holistically and stuff. Right. But to me, like, that is the biggest, and I love that. This is going to be such a valuable tool for me and for anybody that I share it with, because when you start to separate your essence from your personality, because if we were incarnated, let's say 1,000 years ago in a different culture, we would completely program our personalities differently. Some of that's unconscious, but some of it's very conscious. Yeah. So you can step back and be like, okay, well, the programmed, because like Gurdjieff starts off, he's like, man is a robot. Man has no will. He's like, fuck you. He's like that motherfucker on the playground that just wants to start some shit.
Yeah, that's where he starts.
Yeah. So he starts with the problem, but he does offer the solution. And I like that a lot, and basically it's a lot of Eastern stuff, self-reflection, and really deepening that understanding of what your essence is. And so you got to have both. And there's nothing wrong with having like a personality, he says, but you got to balance that out with what the essence is, because that's where the true, expression kind of comes from. And it's about self-remembering. That's his whole thing, right? And so when you can remember that essence and identify it, then you're getting closer to like those. I think he has a 7-tiered 7 again, right?
Right.
So always just 7. Like the chakras, but like a 7-tiered sort of map of consciousness, like man number 1, man number 2, man number 3, and up.
Right. And it's mindfulness that he's really talking about, a term that like wasn't a Western term at the time, at all. Mindfulness. Being present with what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, it's I loved it. I've really enjoyed it. It's added an extra layer of understanding and more tools. It's like I think everything's kind of saying the same thing, ultimately, I think. And back to this ink and paper thing, if we just learn to follow our intuitions better and just learn those signals better and understand that process better, then maybe we can start to answer some of these questions without having all these distractions.
Yeah, it's weird too. Like Kate and I always go back and forth. We'll talk about how rigid some of the spiritual like path sounds sometimes, like even purity itself. And maybe it's just our egos talking, but it's like, man, did we come here to be human or did we not? Like, it's such an in-between. And I find myself in that in-between place between a lot of what my Christian friends say, because I absolutely value the meanings and the archetypes and the messages behind a lot of biblical texts and stuff. I think I don't have to be a Christian. I don't even have to, believe the front-facing story of it to understand that this text is very important, whether it was hijacked and encoded with stuff or not. It's giving absolute things, so I'm stuck between that and then the more not new age, that's what it will be called, but the more esoteric side of things, which is unfortunately for those that are freaked out, closer to the heart, right? Because it's like, that's the information that flows out of me in conversations like this that I didn't read in a book. It came from my experiences, and I related to those things written about the esoteric world. And then I reread the religion that I grew up with, and I was like, oh, okay. Okay, we got a much bigger puzzle on our hands here. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, this all fits together. Not even just like, we can talk about history, how all the religions fit together. And then you can talk about spiritually and cognitively, how all the stories are archetypes of your own world. It's this repeating muscle memory of stories over and over for, you know, our entire history. It is that Joseph Campbell, you know, hero's adventure. It's the hero with 1,000 faces. It really is. It starts in here, and then it ends up in this collective world that we have. We see those stories over and over again in our history. It starts in here, right?
It's such an amazing way to communicate. We do it without even realizing that we're doing it. And regardless of what's even intended based on the story, everyone who hears it's going to come up with their own interpretation. So
yeah. Yeah, it's funny how we say, oh, the ancient spoken symbolism. We don't. So that's why it's hard to interpret everything. It's like, well, okay, but symbols are stories. And we absolutely were raised on how to interpret life and morals and a lot of things through story. So we're not that far removed. They're still our family, you know?
I think so too. Yeah. I think we're not that far removed. I love that all these new discoveries and ideas and possibilities keep getting discovered, because I mean that's how we grow as a community. And it's, I don't know, I guess some people could look back and be like, and a lot of people will point fingers and scream like misinformation or something, who knows what all. I'm sure there's a lot of drama. I just don't even pay attention to any of that personally anyways, but
we're all on different points.
Yeah, we're all and you're following your curiosity, your path.
Like if someone woke up today and realized, I think there's something going on between these two polar opposite political parties. Good. You know, a lot of us have been there for 2 decades. Welcome to the fucking show. But, like, that's the tip of the iceberg. But hey, you're standing on there with the mittens and waving to us. All right, you're here. You know, we're all on these different points. So, I mean, yeah, people are going to yell and you just can't pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Or maybe you should. I shouldn't say that. I know that sentiment's out there a lot, that, you know, just ignore it all. But when I can interact and it's not going to be toxic, I absolutely try to, because these are the people that want to be informed and are asking. They're not our family members who don't want to hear it at Thanksgiving dinner. You know?
Yeah, no, totally. I'm certainly open, and I'm open to other ideas and interpretations, you name it, right? Like, I want to learn more. I think it's great because it is fractals, right? Like, it's just, we're just going to see the same things over and over, I think, a lot of times anyway, all these different patterns. So yeah, if somebody has a good intention, then absolutely I'll entertain it. You know, I have people hit me up, you know, sending me emails, telling me all kinds of crazy stories. Some of them I believe, some I'm not so sure.
Right. Yeah. And you're going to find little truth nuggets in all of them, you know?
That's right. That's exactly
like, I don't believe in, I don't see the earth as flat, but I absolutely applaud and I love our flat earthers out there who have exposed how bullshit NASA is. And I think for some, they'll be like, oh, well, you don't, okay, you can understand that aspect, but you're still hanging on to your globe. Like, yeah, well, I hang on to as above, so below. And actually, yeah, fractal geometry, the structure of the universe, sacred geometry. Like, sorry, these things don't lie, and spheres are included in mathematics, which is it's the system we're engulfed in. You know, we don't have to see it mathematically, but so that's anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I definitely was interested in that and looking at a bunch of different things for over a year, which ultimately I knew, like, it doesn't matter to me. It's not going to help me in my world or my working with people, whether it's flat or round, doesn't matter. We still have the same challenges that we're going to overcome. We still want to be as creative as possible and understand, you know, and do that type of work. Cause that's what I'm mostly focused on. You know, it's like, so yeah, that's all well and good. Sure. Let's look into it, but I'm not here to, I don't want to, I can't waste, not that it's a waste of time for anybody, but for me and what I have to focus on, it would kind of take me off my path. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of different sort of things to be distracted by, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel that same sentiment towards politics. I am not up to par with the information. I'm always looking to others. If I want to know, it's got to be from somebody else, because I'm not doing any research of, political figures and characters. No, because, when I look at the past and the patterns that we see, all I have to do is look at whatever's on TV for like 3 seconds and go, well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
It's all just repeating anyway.
It is. It's so easy to see through too, all the stuff on TV. That's what I think is eventually going to start clicking with most people, is like how overt the propaganda is. So just asking a question like, do you believe you're immune to propaganda? Like, are you affected by it? Like
Right.
whatever, like little things like that, where people like just to short circuit them enough to give a little bit of space, to maybe open up, and eventually they will, right? When they see this overt ridiculous shit on TV, and they're like, oh fuck, like I'm under attack.
Yeah.
Me.
Oh, it's me. Oh, me. No, you. No, me. Oh,
exactly.
Yeah, and it's like, sometimes it feels like the absurdity is on purpose, and that's not really a new idea, of course, but I think how many of us interpret it usually is that it's in a mocking tongue, right? And yeah, maybe it could totally be. I just like to entertain the other idea that behind these characters, and I don't mean it as in like they're all wearing masks or they're all CGI. I just mean in this realm, in this understanding of our interactions with one another in physical reality, these characters whatever's behind them, whatever the intent is, maybe the energetic interpretation of what's happening on this planet with all these humans, maybe it's trying to wake us up. Because it's like, maybe we should make that a little bit more obvious for them. Oh, come on. No, really. I mean, think about it. It's been like a long time, and we're getting really close to that moment, and we really want them to be awake for it.
Yeah.
It feels like that a little bit. It also feels a little bit back towards the Nemesis side. It feels like Captain Hook. Remember in Hook, he gave Tinkerbell like 3 days, of course, 3 days, to get your man in shape, because he wanted his war. He didn't want to fight some codfish, right? So maybe that's what the revelation of the method is all about. Maybe that's why the obviousness is they're talking to us. They're not talking to the people that are buying into everything.
Right.
They're talking to us with all their bullshit that they know is bullshit.
And they know we can see it, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if that's paranoid or onto something, but it feels weirdly right on one level or another,
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. Yeah, because the other people aren't going to see that. They're going to totally miss it, right? Like their awareness is not even tuned into that. But then you see it and you're like, oh shit! It's like calling somebody out or like doing a secret handshake or something. Nobody else sees that secret handshake except for the person who knows what it is.
Yeah, man, it's all of us freaks.
That's right.
So how about that? What weird world is it when we realize, I don't know, that's a dystopian fucking sci-fi movie, when all the awake spiritually people, like all of us, suddenly realize that everybody else wasn't even real, and it was just us and this fucking thing.
That's crazy.
Because we're the only ones they're actually talking to.
Well, I think the internet's like that, right, too, where there's all these robots and like click farms and stuff like that, where it's like you just see this overwhelming, opposite opinion, and it's scary. It's like, oh my God, there's this, it seems insurmountable of all these people who are going along with whatever the modern, narrative is. But how many of those, probably they say at least 50 to 60% are robots. So
yeah. The dead internet theory.
It's like a psych out.
And, I took the dead internet theory wrong at first, or maybe I took it right, and maybe they don't say this. I don't know. But originally I took it like that it's always been that way, but that it's like always kind of been partly an illusion. But the way I was looking at it recently is that, well, if AI is going to take over, it's probably going to do it through the internet first and infiltrate there. So maybe that's what's happening. And maybe, yeah, I don't know. That's just a dead end thought, but yeah, maybe that's how it's starting, you know, and that would make sense, right? Because this gang that's attacking us all the time is always subversive. They're always covert.
Right.
So that would be the perfect method anyway.
Well, it's cheaper now, right? Like you don't want to wage actual war because then you got to buy weapons and hire people, and Halliburton has to do $50 bags of laundry, and you know, that's a whole thing. If you could just fuck with people's heads, you know, that's like 3 cents per click. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a whole different strategy.
And especially if it's mostly just us clicking on that shit, man, that's rough.
Well, it's kind of like it's adding a whole nother layer to that ink and paper thing, right? Because now you have the memory hole where you can change that shit at any point in time. You can change it back. We're Eurasia, East Asia. I don't know. Who are we at war with again? You know?
Yeah. Ourselves. Ah, man. Damn it.
Every time. Oh, that's
have you ever seen that meme where it's like before and after spiritual awakening, and it like shows a little kid crying with a boot on his head, and then afterwards it's his own fucking arm?
Yeah. I love that.
Oh, that gave me chills. I'm like, oh, because I think you and I talked about like the last time we spoke, or maybe the first time, about like tripping balls, man. You like find the conspirator in here, and you find all the patterns that your inner child's been hiding from you, and you know, acting like nothing's going on, nothing's wrong. You know, hiding all sorts of things. It's amazing. It is. Yeah. I found a page in my book just today, and it's a lot of just prompt questions like, what part of you, you know, wants to give up? What part of you, you know, speaks negatively to yourself? What part of you, you know, just all these different prompts and these different questions. Wow. I'm not even sure what book that's from. It might be from The Artist's Way, but I don't think it is. It might, I don't know. That's cool though.
I didn't put like
good questions.
I usually put like a page number or something in my notes if I'm like referencing it from something, but it is things like that, right? It's like back to the idea of like, oh, let's just give up. Fuck it. You know? Like, good luck, you know, because you're not going to be able to do that, but you can start to chart these different like parts of yourself and figure out like, okay, what am I protecting? You know, what do I have to lose by being honest? Only things that don't matter. So, you know, how can
things that are lies anyway, or
exactly,
you know, something like that.
Exactly. Stuff that I don't fucking value to begin with. So
yeah, pretty quickly it just turns into a house of cards, and you just don't want the house of cards to fall. And that's all there is. It's just a lie for the lie, you know,
right.
A dishonesty or an inauthentic move for an, you know,
exactly.
It just fractals out.
Personality versus essence.
Yes,
back to that,
absolutely.
Right? Like
I really like that. I like that frame.
I like it a lot too. Yeah, it's going to be so helpful for just figuring out and asking. You know, you can ask yourself with a pendulum or do like a muscle test with something like that.
Yeah.
Like, is this my person or is this my essence that want, like, you know, like, or like, just he says to just do a lot of reflection on that, and that makes sense to me. You know, just
because like my wife does the pendulum, she likes it a lot, and this is kind of, you know, chaos magic versus ceremonial magic and things like that, where it's like. And I'm not calling myself a chaos magician. I'm just saying that this metaphor relates to it. It's just that, like, you know, if you can just reflect and get it done that way, then it works. And some things I can do that with. Other things I haven't been able to yet. Maybe I will. I don't know. Other things, you know, it depends on how good you are at it. If you don't trust yourself enough with something, then you're going to need those props. You're going to need these external parts to kind of link you to, you know, the corporeal back to that incorporeal. And then, you know, eventually maybe, or I don't know what the circumstances are, but sometimes you can do it without, and it just becomes, you know, part of how you think, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, no. And he says too, Gurdjieff, he talks because he's talking about alchemy. And he's actually pointing out that that's just new connections in the brain. That he talks about every chemical and all this shit, but it's just new chemicals in the brain. That's basically exactly what he's talking about. It's
that's why I love Gurdjieff. It's like man, I love that kind of shit, because I always see that about like alchemy or other concepts. It's like as soon as I learn about something, immediately the tendency is to scale outwards and see what else that concept represents in reality. You know, you take war, you can go to infinity with that, you know, any concept, and you just start scaling in and out and seeing where those physics are in the world, in people's personalities and culture. And it's nuts. It's pretty cool, man.
Man, it's awesome. Yeah, man. No, it's so cool. I'm excited to learn more about. I definitely want to check in with you guys and see kind of how you continue. What's the name of your show with Dan and Knocky Dan?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we do a Patreon show called Deep Share, and it's literally like, it's not really like a show format. It kind of is. We'll say hi, I guess, to the audience for a second, but like for the most part, it's just us talking to each other and asking each other questions, reading things. We're researching, and you get to be like a fly on the wall.
That's
basically
pretty damn cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. We don't, you know, we're using Bock Saga and stories like it, you know, the Poetic Edda, you know, the book that you mentioned, what was it? The Oralinda book.
Oralinda,
that's
yeah.
Another great reference. I have a book right here, Atlantis of the North by Jürgen Spanuth. I had to get this, like, this was like a rare find, only found it like used. And it was like fucking $40, but not too bad. But yeah, it's another perspective, and we're looking at different parts of history and different other people's work on certain cultures and what they came out of it with. And we're going, well, like, oh, many times we're like, oh, how about that? He came to this conclusion without even realizing he was making this connection to Bock Saga. He literally brought it out for us. Thank you very much, whoever that was, you know, archaeologist or historian. It's pretty interesting stuff. We're going all over the place. So
that's so cool. No, I love that. I think that's really, really fascinating, and I'm excited to hear what you guys come up with that. That shit is fascinating to me, dude. Like, I never cared when I was a kid. None of our family did, about our genetic roots or our family tree or any of that shit. And now I'm like incredibly fascinated with all of it. It's weird how that
dude happened. Like I kind of loved it ever since Indiana Jones thing, and then Ancient Aliens when I was younger and stuff like that. But then all these years later, becoming good friends with Dan Knocky Dan from Rising from the Ashes, shout him out, he's awesome. That dude, you know, we were friends for a quick minute, and like, he's going, dude, I found this out about our families from way back in history. We fought alongside each other. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is a cool friendship. Like,
that is amazing. Awesome. That's amazing, so like, dude.
That he's triggered like a whole new level of like digging way deeper into history, and he's who introduced me to the Bock Saga originally anyway. Wow. And our good friend Joke from Sweden, who joined us on our show Roots of Creation, which we haven't done any episodes in a lot of months, but we're talking about maybe doing one again. We used to have people on that were very close friends with Eeyore Bock from Finland, telling this story of his family line, supposedly going back to the very beginning. All these men that were friends with him, like some of them came on our show and shared their experiences and their take on things. And we planned on to keep going with it, but we just kind of, a lot of things have gotten in the way, honestly. So we're thinking about doing it again. You know?
That's cool. I love it, man. I'll put a link for that down below so people can check it out. And
you know, I gotta say, if you want a really comprehensive take on like at least our perspective, the three of us, we were on Sam's tinfoil hat like a few months ago. I can't remember, maybe May. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But and man, our buddy Joke from Sweden just erupted out and like just shared all the information, man. And he's got the key. Like, the one thing I didn't really talk about is the Swedish and the Finnish languages, and how this Bock Saga claims that like there was this root language and there was the Vonner language, which was everything else outside of that one area in the north, and that we now speak a combination of those two languages and everything. It's pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, that's
I don't know where I was.
No, I'll put a link in that, because you're just saying, like, if people want a good comprehensive overview of it, that's a good place to start. So
yeah, he really unleashed the fury on that episode.
that
was
badass. Cool. Well, good. What a great place to do it too, you know?
Yeah, it was fun. A lot of oh my gods. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. Oh my God, dude.
That's good. Yeah. It was fun. Yeah. But we've been trying to spread it around. You know, we're open to coming on other people's shows and answering questions. That's the most important part. Like, we get it. A lot of people haven't heard this before, so we got to tell it. And that's fine. And a lot of people are really sick of telling it. Like, some of the guys from Sweden and Finland are just like, oh my God, I don't want to go over Paradise Time again. You know what I mean? So we're doing it because it's still new to us. But eventually it's like, okay, bring on the firestorm of doubt and questions, because we want to tear it down. We want to chisel this all down to its final form, man. We're just uncovering the traumas of our collective history together. And that's really, I think, the only way we're going to appropriately move forward as a species together. So time to take all the ghosts and all the skeletons out.
Hell yeah. Let's unpack the whole suitcase, man. See what's in here and start seeing what we can do. And I love the idea too of putting like getting some land and all of that. I think that's
man, we didn't talk about that enough.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more. I think it's fascinating. It's something that I've been thinking a lot about too. Just, it would be really cool to just have a place where people can, you know, feel, you know, at home and start working on some different projects, you know, and this, it's just, things take the amount of time I think that they need to take, right? Like, you can't rush shit. You can't rush trust and that type of thing, you know.
No.
It's like, you know,
play out. I always just try to enjoy that part where it's like, man, I can't wait to look back on how anxious I was for this to all happen.
Yes, that's such a great perspective, dude. I love that.
Oh, I love this time. This is like the hard, even like while we've been like struggling financially off and on. It's like, well, I can't wait to look back. You know, I can picture us telling older, you know, Finnegan, like, oh, a long time ago. Yeah. Back before this happened and this happened. Well, life was a lot different back then. I can see that happening. And maybe that's manifestation, but that's like just something I've been doing, you know. I just try to do that as much as possible.
If it wasn't hard enough to make you think about giving up, then it wasn't challenging enough to actually go through. That's the paradox, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Wherever there are paradoxes, flee towards them.
Yeah. Run to the paradox.
Most of the time. Unless it's like literally like a floating box. Don't do that.
For sure, man. Well, anything else you want to throw out there? I know we could probably go on for a long time. I would love that too. We should do.
I know. Well, I'm so thankful for you having me on. I should have you on the Deep Share soon so we can just do this more.
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah, I'd love to do a live stream too at some point. Just get a little bit of a panel coming. I need to introduce you to Joe Roop. You guys are gonna really enjoy each other.
Yeah, I think we briefly spoke one time through an email, briefly, and we just haven't made anything happen yet. But he's a fascinating guy. I've heard him speak on a lot of different subjects, and I jive with a lot of stuff he says. So yeah, that'd be a great conversation to get us together.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll make that happen. And yeah, just reach out to me any old time, and
hell yeah, man,
to let people know where to find you, track you down and stuff.
Yeah, I'm on the socials at just the Deep Share. You can find me ranting and much angrier, I think, on Twitter. I think Twitter makes me like angry. The angrier metal side of me comes out a little more. But yeah, I'm on Instagram and Twitter. The Deep Share podcast is on YouTube and Odyssey. I'm technically on Rockfin, but I haven't done anything with it. And yeah, I'm on all the typical podcast platforms, and I'm on Patreon with Dan. So yeah, it's been really awesome catching up with you, man. It's been a long time. And I really like where your mind's at with this whole land thing. And I think, as you said, things are going to happen as they happen, and we're going to rejoice in that while we start talking about some stuff.
That's right. While we get the ball in motion. Cause I think that's it, man. I'm really excited about it. I think there's a lot of potential there, and a lot of really fucking awesome things that are like beyond our own scope that we couldn't even.
Oh, hell yeah.
That's the best part, right? Like,
yeah. All the shit that we like, our future selves they're just laughing at us like, oh, they have no idea.
Yes, exactly. It's like the Field of Dreams thing where he's like has that meltdown. He's like, I'm asking what's in it for me? What's in it for me? And then they go off into the cornfield and they all vanish and he's all bummed out. But then his fucking dad's there and they get to have a catch, you know?
Dude, oh my God, I gotta see that movie. That's one of my favorite movies growing up. I was a big baseball player. So I mean, I love that movie. I gotta watch that again as like I haven't seen that since I was like 12 or 13. So
such a good one.
Whew.
Yeah.
If you build it, they will. Or if you build it, he will come.
Yeah, that's right. That's one of those Mandela effects, right?
Dude. All right. Yeah, I gotta. Yeah, stay tuned for Bootsy Greenwood on the deep share like stat.
Stoked. Yeah, dude. Let's do it. I'm stoked.
All right, man. It's been real.
No, thank you so much.
Thanks.